The final X-Men movie produced by Fox has hit theaters, and it's probably not the worst movie of the franchise, so let's talk about it. When Jean Grey is exposed to an unknown cosmic force, she suddenly gains new powers she can't control, and this leads to a dark secret being revealed. Originally, this movie was supposed to come out last fall, but it was delayed until February to do massive reshoots and reconstruct the entire third act. Then it was delayed a second time to its current release date, and due to the massive reshoots, 2 delays, and just the Fox Disney acquisition, this movie hasn't had the best buzz. Well, what do I think about it? I'll tell you my full thoughts in just a second, but be sure to share your thoughts down below in the comment section. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did it live up to the bad buzz, or was it actually better than you expected? Let's have a nice lively discussion, and with that said, let's get started talking about the good. And one of the best things about this movie is that it has some great X-Men action in it from beginning to end. Whether you're talking about a space sequence, they use Quicksilver as a member of the team who does heroic stuff. It's not just his super speed thing isn't just used as a gimmick here, it's actually kind of a cool action sequence the way that it's used inside of the film. The third act has some great moments that put a huge grin on my face as each of our characters got to use their powers in a way to be the hero inside of the third act. As always, Michael Fassbender is a powerhouse as Magneto. He gets some great moments inside of this film as well, whether you're talking about kind of the anger, the sorrow, the tragedy, or just getting to tear people to pieces with pieces of metal. Also, the score here from Hans Zimmer is very cool. It pops, it catches your attention. Early in the movie, I'd forgotten that he was doing the score, and I was like, the score to this is actually pretty cool. What's going on here? Then I went, oh yeah, Hans Zimmer scored this one, and it made a lot more sense. And then inside of this movie, you get to see the X-Men as just heroes going on a mission to save the day and being appreciated, which I really enjoyed that about the film, of letting our heroes be heroes inside of their superhero movie. With that said, unfortunately, we gotta move on to the mixed. The thing that makes this movie so frustrating is that there's a lot of good ideas inside of the film, but the specific execution I don't think is great, or where they take certain plot lines I don't think plays out particularly well. So there's a whole bunch of things that I got excited about at first, and then where it went with it left me pretty disappointed. One of those is the way that the mutant acceptance inside of society is handled. Early on in the film, I was like, I really like the world that they've established. It's different from the other X-Men films. But then, where that plot line goes, it undermines what they established in the first part of the film. Earlier, I mentioned that the Quicksilver action is very cool. It's very cool in the beginning of the film, and then they underutilize him in the second half of the film. I mentioned earlier that the third act of the film has some great moments for each of our X-Men, which is absolutely true. The basic idea of this train climax is actually pretty good. But the execution, it feels like they filmed it in half the amount of time that they needed, and so things feel clunky the way they play together. Everything feels a little bit underdeveloped. The power moments aren't as powerful as they probably should be because it feels like big, massive reshoots, which is exactly what it is. Likewise, Charles Xavier is unbearable inside of this film, which is frustrating because the actual plot lines that they chose for him are actually pretty good and make sense inside of this film. But they wrote his character to be so egotistical and out of character that you hate the person that he is inside of this film, and the plot lines don't work because of it. And as you're watching the movie, you're thinking, these plot lines would work if you had the usual humble, hope-filled, maybe too optimistic Charles Xavier inside of these exact same plot lines, whether you're talking about the connection to Jean Grey's past or kind of his trying to navigate the relationship between mutants and the general public. Both of those would work with his normal personality, but instead they wrote him so insufferable that you just don't like his character, and the plot lines fall flat because of it. From there, let's move on to the negative. Now, the obvious criticism of this film just even existing is that it's retelling or rehashing the same plot line as The Last Stand and telling the Phoenix storyline again. Now, I think there's some merit in trying to do the Phoenix plot line properly with this film, but the movie repeats specific beats from The Last Stand. It's in the trailer. You see Jean Grey losing control in a suburban area, and in the movie, it feels very reminiscent of the scene from The Last Stand. And as is the case with so many mediocre comic book movies, there's too many plot lines for the runtime. The main plot line about Charles Xavier and Jean Grey and her backstory, that one they spend a lot of time developing, but pretty much everything else is pretty thin. Like, they try and work humans and their reaction to mutants into the second half of the film, but it's just kind of thrown in there. It's not developed, there's no backstory to it, it's just kind of a plot point inside of it. It feels like they slow cooked our main plot line about Charles Xavier and Jean Grey, and everything else was just tossed into the microwave to be cooked up real quick like leftovers. The worst example of this being our main villains. They're just a totally generic set of aliens looking to take over the Earth. They have no distinguishing personality traits, qualities. There's nothing to make any one of them seem any different from any of the other ones. They're just evil, and even their motivation and scheme is just generic sci-fi invasion stuff. As for the rest of our X-Men, they're not given much of anything to do. Cyclops is just the serious guy that likes Jean Grey. He doesn't have much of anything else beyond that. Nightcrawler is the nice guy that's always trying to save people, but he has no arc. Quicksilver gets some nice moments in the first half, and then he's underused. And then we show the school having all these people at it, but none of them are given character arcs, distinguishing qualities. You just see mutants running around the school. It just feels like we're ignoring all of the rest of the X-Men besides our main 3 people or so. And of our main characters we are spending time with, none of them are likable at all, and all of them are acting totally out of character. Now, there's a reason Jean Grey's acting character, but Charles and Hank are not behaving in line with the people that they've been established to be in the previous films. Their emotions, their personality traits are different, and they react so emotionally to things in a way that just does not feel right. And it only happens because that's what the script requires for them to create certain tensions and conflicts inside of the film. And one of the reasons that no one is likable in this film is because there's so much inner tension with the team, so much conflict, it just kind of chokes all of the joy out of our team dynamic and the fun that could be had. And it certainly doesn't help that this is probably the weakest performance we've gotten from each of these actors playing these characters inside of this franchise. Before I give my final thoughts on this one, share your thoughts down below in the comment section. I know some people actually really enjoyed this one, and a lot of people really did not like this one. Let's have a nice, lively, yet respectful conversation. Also, I'm going to be ranking the X-Men movies tomorrow, so come back to check that out, and I might have some other X-Men rankings coming next week. In the end, it's not a total disaster, but it's a mixed bag from beginning to end. It doesn't have the totally embarrassing lows of some of the movies in this franchise, but there's also nothing particularly great about it. Even in its good ideas, it's tinged with mediocrity. Overall, I'd give this one a C, only a 5 out of 10, and as much as it breaks my heart, I'd say you can skip this one. Be sure to share your thoughts down below in the comments section. Check out that video right over there if you want more Sean Chandler Talks About. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.